Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case answering the question, can a handgun be used to defeat an army? And the answer is yes. That would be the short version of the video. Guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, consider doing so. You have the button somewhere there below. It really helps the channel and you'll get notifications. Remember also to hit the notification bell button. And of course, I always say in my video, if you're interested in this sort of thing, you have my books available. In terms of the practical stuff that I'm going to be covering in the video of use of firearms and self-defense and practical preparedness and survival, street survival skills would be the book for that. The Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse, for the economic aspect of everything that you're going to be seeing all over the world, no matter where you are, especially in terms of inflation. I mean, I've gone through that myself, a full-blown economic collapse with inflation through the roof, and I can tell you a little bit more how life is when that goes down and how to prepare for that, and bugging out and relocating for a lot of people that, folks like in Ukraine that have to make that very tough choice. This would be the book so as to learn more about that. Okay, all of that being said, yes, this is a very common misconception that some people have, especially if they don't understand much about not only firearms, but like tactics in general. There's this idea that, hey, you cannot do anything against a tank. They have missiles, bombs, they have machine guns. It's an army, a gun, a handgun, a rifle or handgun cannot do anything against an organized military. It is actually the opposite. There's nothing a military can do to defeat an armed population if they simply don't give up. This is very common. I've gotten this sort of question over the years many times. It's kind of like in the line of the misconception of that non-gun people have regarding police, cops, and soldiers. Like, what, you think you're a soldier? You think you're a cop and you know how to use a gun? They don't understand that even the average civilian with a little bit of money and time invested can get training that is just as good or even very often superior to what the average cop or even the average soldier has. That's a very basic level that it's required, and if you're interested in this, if you're dedicated, you can learn a lot more than what you would be taught in an academy. And yes, there's a case of special forces soldiers or tactical units that do the tactical thing a lot more often, because specifically that's what they're preparing for. So yes, those guys would have more advanced training. Again, many of these often end up training with civilians as well, especially in the sports that involve firearms. There's often guys from special forces or tactical units trying to learn a new trick or two, something they can add to their bag of tools and put that to good use. It's what you saw in John Wick. I don't want to make the video super long, but what you see in John Wick, as many of you know, that is Keanu Reeves actually learning proper shooting. That is mostly sports shooting. He took classes with Taran Tactical. Taran is a practical shooter. It's a IPSC sports shooting. Is this different from tactical shooting? Yes, tactical shooting is a lot more boring, methodical, and surgical, and it really doesn't do much for good movies. It's a lot more visibly impressive, a fast sports shooter, than anyone doing proper tactics. At the same time, again, many special forces guys or tactical guys learn from some of the best practical shooters, some of the best sports shooters, because you're still talking about speed, accuracy, and gun handling, and those things are crucial. It breaks my heart when I saw those images of people in Ukraine saying, I'm picking up a gun for the first time in my life, never shot a gun before, but I'm going to be fighting for my nation. How much better it would have been if they had that training before, if they knew how to use that gun. Guys, regarding that, you really need to get classes from a qualified instructor that is good in his line of work, that has a good standing, a good reputation in the community. Not just any fool giving away, giving classes. There's a lot of that too. If you cannot get classes, street survival skills will help you quite a bit with a lot of this stuff in terms of using guns and tactics for self-defense. This is what I've learned in numerous classes over the years in different countries. It's not nearly as good as actually taking a class, but it's a lot better than having no knowledge whatsoever. So do keep that in mind. And for the price, I mean, it's going to be putting you way ahead of not having gone to any class whatsoever and not having any proper instruction in the use of firearms. It's what I've learned over the years, and what I've learned even in different countries, people teaching the same stuff. It's because it works, right? So yeah, it's very sad when you see this in Ukraine right now, people picking up a gun and saying that sort of stuff. How much better would it have been if they had that? This is like, guys, buying a gun and not getting the training is, as I say so many times, it's like buying a car and not knowing how to drive. I'm not asking you to be a Formula One driver. I'm asking about someone that knows how to drive. So do you have some training? Do you have some information as to use a gun with proper tactics for self-defense? Or you have nothing at all? You never turned the key on that car ever and you're now hitting the road? Or you have something? Something is always going to be a lot better than nothing. Now, just like there's this fantasy of, a police detective like John McClane in Die Hard is going to be beating a bunch of, highly trained terrorists with a background in special forces. No, your average detective is not going to be doing that. In the same line is this fantasy that, no, there's nothing that can be done. They have tanks, man. This is not a video game. It's not the guy with a gun going after a tank one-on-one. It's completely different. Look, the previous video was about guns being for life and liberty, right? The handgun or your rifle. And I always recommend, get yourself your handgun, get yourself a rifle. It's something that's commonly available, a popular model, because of this sort of stuff that you're seeing right now in Ukraine. You want a locally popular model. In the case of the United States, it's going to be an AR. In the case of Ukraine, it's going to be an AK. In both cases, you want to get a Glock pistol, which is what Vladimir Klitschko, the former heavyweight boxer, now mayor of Kiev, that's staying there and fighting, he has a Glock. He's a smart dude, all right? So you want to have both of these, because just like there's the fantasy of, yes, a cop is a highly trained, this is the same fantasy of you cannot beat an army, while it's actually the complete opposite. An army cannot beat a population that does not give up. You saw this in Afghanistan. It's a perfect example. And I'm not saying anything that's not already common knowledge among the people making decisions in the military. They knew perfectly well. History teaches you that Afghanistan, those people just don't give up. They keep on fighting. Why go in there and do a 20-year war and then just leave in the shameful manner that they ended up leaving? Well, because you need to have the wars going on so as to keep the industry and the economy going in a country where most of the GDP revolves around war. If you have an economy that revolves around being in constant war, you always need some kind of war. The Afghanistan war is over. Another war is highly convenient for the elite that runs these things and is making money and needs to keep the economy going, to be honest. That's simply the way the American economy works. But that doesn't mean you're going to be beating people that never surrender. This is why when you look at dictators, they disarm the population. If the will is still there, even disarmed, but it's always, of course, much easier to submit people that are unarmed. That's why in horrible dictatorships around the world, like North Korea, if you look at Cuba or Venezuela used to be a country where people were armed. I remember that because I knew shooters from Venezuela. I hanged out with those guys. I know that they existed, and they lost that right over the years. The worse it got, the less rights to have handguns and firearms in general they had, until the point where it's commie dictatorship. By the way, very much friends with Putin. Not just friends, but actual allies. Keep that in mind whenever you look with a kind eye towards Putin. Remember that he is always associated with some of these horrible dictators because he is a horrible damn dictator himself. But when it comes down to it, you want to have both. And what you see right now in Ukraine is that people are arming themselves with long guns, with rifles, with AK-47s. That's the way it should be. That's the best tool for what you have right now, which is an armed population, a militia, good old school Second Amendment armed militia against a foreign invader, a foreign attacker. You're fighting for your country, not only your life, you're fighting for your home. Now, this is the first stage. If this is finally defeated, and you have to go into stage 2, which is going to be an underground resistance. You know, you're attacking when they least expect it. You look at, you know, because you need to have, as you say, you know, boots on the ground, but then you have to hold those boots on the ground, and that is increasingly difficult in a place where people don't want you there and hate your guts. Even if you end up defeating their main forces, if those people are still armed, at any moment you can get shot. And for that sort of thing, the handgun is key. Yes, a handgun can defeat an army, and that's why a lot of you guys are familiar with the Liberator pistol, the 45 single shot that was dropped over occupied Europe during World War II. The idea with a Liberator, in case you're not familiar with, it's a very cheaply made single shot 45. The person would pick up that 45, shoot a Nazi, get his weapons. It never worked as well as expected. It was more of a, yeah, you could say it was a failure in how it ended up being implemented, because most freedom fighters highly prefer having a semi-automatic pistol or a Sten gun, something better than a single shot 45. It still may have done its job here and there, and at least the fear of getting shot at some point really does a number on the mind of the occupying force. Of course, a Glock is a lot better, but the moment in which you have soldiers on the streets are looking around and they don't know who has a handgun concealed, at any moment a couple people or just one people can just draw on them. And you know what, even if you're a mediocre sports shooter, you can shoot 2-3 targets, do double alphas on them before they're even able to react. 3-4 guys, a guy that's somewhat okay or average even in practical pistol shooting, all of a sudden drawing on you, he's gonna be chewing up those people at close range. It's not going to be easy. It is actually, I would even say that if every single Ukrainian is armed and has some kind of training, it wouldn't have happened in the first place. I doubt he would have dared invade such a country. But it is what it is, and you have people doing their best right now, and we really have to support them. And this video, if you're watching this from Ukraine, know that it's not a matter of if. You cannot be defeated if you don't give up. You saw this in Afghanistan. You saw in Afghanistan when the British were there, when the Russians were there, and when the Americans were there as well. And it goes the same way for any other nation where people just keep on fighting, okay? It was even the case, I think it was in Afghanistan. Let me know, guys, in the comment section if you've been there, if you're a vet. I don't remember exactly how it went, but I believe that in Afghanistan, some were allowed to have their AKs, for defense against the Taliban, but the handgun was banned. You could not have a handgun, you could have a long gun, something along those lines. And I did my research back in the day. A Glock in those regions was going for about $500, about 3 or 4 times what would cost to get an AK. Why is it so valuable? Well, it is somewhat of a status symbol, like the general with his handgun or the commander with his handgun, something like that, but it's also because it's concealable. And even if you have the entire population submitted, at any moment they have this hitting, they can turn around and start shooting on you. And that creates a stress, an instability, a fear, and actually incidents in which soldiers may end up getting shot all the damn time by people that have guns that are concealed. So that is how a humble handgun can be used to defeat an army. Guys, if you're interested in this sort of stuff, again, you have my books available there below. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell button. See you in our next video. Take care.